This is the Albuquerque Business Podcast with your host, Jason Rigby. Each week, we interview leading local business leaders to inspire the vision and spirit that is in every entrepreneur, discussing strengths, weakness, strategies, systems, and the problems we can all solve together to fulfill a shared vision of a new future for Albuquerque.
Hi, and welcome to the Albuquerque Business Podcast. This is Jason Rigby, your host. We want to thank our sponsor, 99.9 The Beat FM. If you are a local business and you want to help a minority-owned not-for-profit, I encourage you to go to 99 The Beat FM here in Albuquerque and stream the music in your business. It's old school, and today's R&B would be awesome to be able to support local business. I know all of us are for that. Well, today we have a very special guest, and I want to introduce Cameron. How you doing, Cameron?
I'm doing great, Jason. You?
Oh, good, good. And Cameron is running for Congress, District 1. And you know what's really cool? We just got done talking about this. You will literally be the youngest elected official in New Mexico.
Yes, I would be.
Yeah, and that's awesome. And so if you don't mind, let me have, your name is Cameron Chick, right?
Yes, sir.
What is your website?
My website is www.cameronchick4congressnmcd1.com.
Perfect. And like if somebody, I know you had said that you're pretty active on Twitter.
Yes. So
what is your Twitter handle so people can go on there? Because I know all
my Twitter
politicians from our president down, right?
Yes, sir.
How often is our president on Twitter?
Our president is on Twitter constantly, sir. It makes me wonder.
Yeah, and you're more on the progressive side. So when we're looking at, especially when we look at somebody far right like the president, but it's funny. I actually look at his tweets just because they're so entertaining.
Yes, they happen to be very entertaining. Sometimes they're very frustrating.
Yeah, it's like WWE or something like that. It's like a wrestling.
Yes. It's like a wrestling match between him and the house.
And everyone else.
And everyone else.
Exactly. So what is your Twitter handle?
My Twitter handle is @chick_CD1.
So this is kind of interesting. So I want people to understand right now, our Congresswoman is Deborah Holland, right?
Yes.
And you're progressive and she's liberal. And I want people to understand the difference between, because everybody's like Democrat or Republican, but they don't understand that there's different levels or layers in that. The Republican side, we get that. We get the, the far right, the conservative right. We understand that. We get, the super far left, but we don't understand. If somebody says they're progressive, what does that mean?
Well, I'll tell you this. When it comes to progressive, the progressives are more for the people than Democrats are, than regular, liberal Democrats. Our liberal Democrats tend to be for things like pro-choice and abortion up to birth, right?
Right.
So when you go to the progressive side, and even into the LGBTQ community,
right,
they support reproductive freedom. So with reproductive freedom, it's literally up to the woman.
Right.
And the government has absolutely nothing to do with it. And that's exactly how I believe it should be. The government should have no say in whether a woman is allowed to abort or not abort.
So you believe that the government should not be involved at all when it comes to women's health?
Yes, I do.
Oh,
because in all reality, every human being has the right to their own thoughts, opinions, and values.
And when it comes to healthcare, because I know that's something that you have really been pushing. When you look at a progressive viewpoint, and I know that's more like Bernie Sanders,
right?
So, and I think that's what you're going at, you would agree a lot with Bernie Sanders?
Yes, I would.
Oh, okay. So when it comes to healthcare, and Bernie Sanders has a model for that. We can all go to his website and read that. What is your stance for New Mexico for healthcare?
Well, I do actually believe that the Affordable Care Act is actually causing a bigger deficit at the moment in our economy, both nationally and here in New Mexico. And I actually support Medicare For All. And I'll tell you why. Medicare For All, it may sound like I'm sitting here saying, oh, I want over 150 million people not being able to get healthcare.
Right.
Well, that's not what I'm saying. And what I'm saying is Medicare for All means everybody. And in the end, it's a win-win for everybody. Because Medicare, as you know, there's copays.
Right.
And the copays get paid to the insurance. The insurance then pays the government.
Right.
That goes back into our economy. And these people don't have to pay anything for the plan. Because Medicare isn't something you're entitled to.
So what would that look like on a, like for New Mexico in particular? Because I know we have a lot of people here in New Mexico that can't afford healthcare. So, I talk to small business owners all the time, and, they'll be, whether they have private contractors or they have people that are working for them. And when I talk to them, a lot of their employees, can't afford the $200, $300, $400, $700 a month. If they're paying them $10 to $15 an hour, having to pay $300, $400 a month, that's a lot of money.
Yes, it is. And that's why we need a plan, and we need a better plan. That's why I believe Medicare for All is a solution.
And so if we talk about Medicare, how long? Medicare's been around for a long time, right?
Yes, it has.
So that it's an established program, or what do you look at it? And I know, because I've heard I watched a Joe Rogan podcast the other day, and Bernie Sanders was on it.
Right.
And they talked for about an hour, and he was talking a little bit about healthcare. When it comes to like New Mexico in particular, and we have so many people that do not have health care. So what you're saying is Medicare for All. So they would go sign up and it would be available to them for free? They would just have to pay the copay, or?
That is basically the idea behind it.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a few kinks, just like any program.
Right.
And we would have to go through an entire session to get rid of those kinks.
Right.
And make sure there's nothing that's going to harm the people either. And that's what I'm all about, is I am for the people. I am not for the party. I will choose the people over the party every single day.
And so that's the difference between a progressive and a liberal, is what you're saying. Is that a progressive is more towards, can you label a progressive? Can you put them like in the middle, or are there super leaning left progressives, or?
I believe that there are both.
Right.
And in that situation, nobody's perfect.
Right.
There is no correct answer to politics anymore. There never was a correct answer. And with that whole term correct,
right,
we're always talking about what's politically correct. And I'm sorry, but when it comes to this, politically correct, no matter if you think you're politically correct, you're still politically wrong in some way.
Yeah, in some way. And I think we're all that way. And it reminds me, like back in the old days when my dad was, because he was like old school, he was Southern, from Georgia. So he was like old school conservative Democrat. They used to have those. And then, like the 70s, 80s came along, and then people started following this whole party line, like where you had to either be Republican or Democrat. And now it's got to the point to where, with all the shaming that goes on, you almost have to, like these last elections, I'm either going to pick somebody that is super left with a lot of corruption attached to them.
Right.
I mean, this is my view, with a lot of corruption attached to them, or I got to pick some narcissist that's crazy, on the right. And like I said, this is my view, that is on the right. And it's like the two choices that I had, because of these party lines that keep getting drawn all the time.
Right.
It felt like it was for the system and not for the people.
Exactly. And that's the whole problem here with our government. We have to choose the lesser of the two evils now. We have no choice.
Right.
And we have to be very careful when electing officials, because there is a fine line between who is the lesser of the two evils.
Right.
And when this happens, we still wind up with somebody that turns out to be just as bad as the other.
Yeah, and I know, and on both sides we see so much corruption nowadays.
Yes, we do.
And I think it's not. And what's crazy is, and I know you're campaigning on this. What's crazy is it's not just nationwide, but it's here in the state.
Yes, it is. And it's actually causing a very big divide in our government. And that divide is reflecting with the people. And when it reflects with the people, we then turn back to the government and say, what do we do?
Right.
And when that happens, the government sits there and bickers some more about
and they're
between each other
because of the corruption has leaned them one way or the other.
Yes.
And so they're not going for the people. They're going for the lobbyist or, whatever type of, greased hand has happened, behind the scenes. And I know in New Mexico, we've had so many of the haves and the have-nots. And I know for a lot of years, there has been, I think it's changing. We're in the beginning stage of changing. That's why I like to bring you on, because you're young. And I think we need more young people into politics. I'm 46. How old are you?
I'm 25.
25. See, that's awesome. I love that.
And
whether I agree with you or disagree with you, because we're going to have, this is the season for politics. So on Albuquerque Business Podcast, we're going to have both sides. And I wanted to bring a progressive side on. That's why I wanted to bring you on, so that people can understand that and make their own decisions. Because at the end of the day, you have to vote with conviction for who you think is best representing you.
Yes, sir. And that is the whole entire idea behind democracy.
Not a party, but what you feel.
What we feel. What that person personally feels may not line up with everybody.
Right.
And it's never going to.
Right.
We're all different people.
Right. Exactly. Yeah, we're all different. I mean, I've openly talked about this, and some of you may cut me off, but, I was in the Marine Corps, so for me, some things I may be kind of liberal on, but then other things like the Second Amendment, I'm for that. I think it's important that we have that. I think that we need to get our systems in place about how and who we let people own, weapons. And I think this is a huge issue, and it needs to be brought together. Both parties need to come together and not make extremes on this and figure this out, especially with school shootings and stuff that's going on. But you couldn't really label me per either party. And I think there's a lot of people, and this is why I wanted to bring you on, Cameron, because I think there's a lot of people that are out there that really have issues with just voting a party.
Yes, they do. And it's becoming more and more common now. They don't know what way to swing anymore.
Right.
Because everything has gone either A, too far right, or B, too far left.
Yeah, and I think social media has a lot to do with that.
And when that happens, it's usually because of the corruption,
right?
A, and B, because of things like social media. Social media right now is driving this. They are assisting in the corruption of officials. I'm not saying social media is always a bad thing, because it's not.
Right.
Social media has turned into this thing that has actually saved lives because of people actually, without even realizing it, they turn themselves in.
Oh yeah, or you have like if there's a natural disaster.
Exactly.
Facebook has this thing where you can say that you're okay to your family. Those are the awesome parts. The problem with, and we're this is like an experiment, especially on social media side. So when this political campaign hit, and then Trump used his, that guy from Austin, Texas, I think he's making him his campaign manager now, but he was his digital guy. What Facebook algorithm did was it likes to, and I think this was kind of like, because I know Mark Zuckerberg's been before Senate and Congress and all that. But I think what's happening is the algorithm naturally, it was this whole idea of, if you like something, let's give you more of what you like so you stay on the platform and see our ads. So what was happening was, on the digital marketing side, what was happening was, if you were liking something that was far left, let's say, or far right, doesn't matter, then it would just turn around and feed you those same posts over and over again. So now you're building bigger trenches in this warfare, bigger walls, no pun intended. And at the end of the day, you look at this, and then it's developed this anger. And that's something that I feel like you can come on the scene, and being progressive in the sense, whether I agree with you or disagree with you, it doesn't matter. But you can come on the scene and say, hey, let's get back to what America is all about. And what America's all about is the ability for the people to be able to make the decisions.
Yes, that's exactly what our democracy was found on.
Right.
And when we talk about protecting our democracy, what Congress is saying is one thing.
Right.
But what protecting our democracy would be is getting all these officials out that are just sucking the life out of America.
Right. That's what they're doing. Yeah.
They are literally sucking the life out of our democracy.
Mm-hmm.
And democracy was never intended to be what it is today. I mean, I don't think presidents like Reagan or even JFK would have seen this coming. And if they did, they would have probably put a stop to it.
Oh, yeah. I mean, both of them would stand outside of the White House. I remember press conferences one after the other where they were like, Reagan, for instance, he was like, these people behind us here are the ones stalling everything. Here we are trying to get this for the people, and then we turn around, and we see both of them had attempts on their life. And I'm not saying I don't want to get into conspiracy theories and all that, but there's an establishment that's been around that is not for the people. It's for the establishment. It's for more and more and more power. And I see New Mexico, and I haven't been here for very long. I came from Seattle and moved here. But I see a lot of laws that are being passed and things that we see that are benefiting a certain group of people. And they're not looking at New Mexicans as a whole. How would you, like with corruption, how would you look at that and say, here's what we need to do? How would you develop like honesty and transparency?
So when it comes to this, I believe that honesty and transparency is a big part of keeping our democracy together.
Right.
And when it comes to keeping our democracy together, that is a must for our country.
Right.
Our country without it is going to turn either one way or another.
Right.
It's going to turn into either A, a third world country, or B, a communist country.
Right.
Or, God forbid,
socialism,
anything else.
whatever, yeah.
And democracy is why everybody wanted to be in America in the first place. America had a true democracy, and we've gotten away from those values. And to do this, and bring our democracy back together as a whole, the American people, it's in their hands.
Right.
The American people are where it's going to lie. Because in all reality, does Congress vote themselves in? Or Senate? Or even the president? Are they all voted in by themselves? No, they're not.
Right.
The American people vote for them, and they get elected.
Right.
And being elected should be very honorable.
Yes.
And you
a
should be.
responsibility to serve the people.
Exactly. And when you're dishonest and corrupt and turn into something else, whatever it may be, you wind up betraying the American people.
Yeah, and I think, and then so the very office that you were put in to serve the people turns into this conglomerate of perseverance where it's trying to save itself.
Exactly.
And so you're working for this system that's separate from democracy.
Exactly.
And I think whether we're left or whether we're right, and this is why I think this is something that's great that you're pushing. Whether we're right or whether we're left, we can all agree on that.
Yes, we absolutely can.
I mean, whether you're extremely far right or whether you're extremely left, we all should stand against corruption.
Exactly. And that's the whole point of democracy. When it comes to getting back to your question, when it comes to this, I think the problem here that needs to be figured out and solved is how do we come together and not work and sway away from working for the system anymore? Get rid of it. Stop working for the system and start listening to the American people. That is the resolution to this problem.
Because I think the voice of the American people is different than what the system is. I mean, we're seeing that.
Yes, we are. And we're seeing that this mass outrage
Right.
over everything that's going on right now. We're seeing politicians on both sides being boycotted and shamed and accused of everything.
Or shouted out, you know,
Exactly.
more processors.
Such as the example the other day. A couple of days ago at the World Series, there was an outrage about President Trump for something he had done. And they were chanting, "Lock him up."
Right.
Things like that. There's people on all over Twitter.
Right.
Because I follow Miss Pelosi, Speaker Pelosi. And I see people constantly on both sides, either A, protecting her on her decision to open an impeachment inquiry,
Right.
or B, either A, shaming her, or B, what they're doing is they're tearing into her and trying to dismantle everything because
and what
of their beliefs.
we talked off the mic, but what we were talking about is allowing the justice system to work.
Exactly. That's what I believe in. I believe in the justice system. Just this year in June, I graduated with a second college degree. I graduated with my bachelor's in criminal justice.
That's awesome.
And I am a firm believer in the criminal justice system. And the justice system works when it is used the way it was intended. When you actually use evidence. That's the whole thing here. Is there evidence to impeach or is there not?
Right.
And that's what Congress has got to decide.
Right.
And from what I heard yesterday, they're going to make their decision on Halloween. Which is very interesting.
I wonder if they're going to dress up with costumes. They already have them.
Right.
I always made this, and we talked about it earlier, but I always look at Washington, D.C. as like a WWE match where they just put on different costumes. They go out and they pretend like they wrestle with each other. And then afterwards, they just go have beers together with all the lobbyists. You know, that's what I always picture in my head. You know, that's why I think there's a lot of distrust with government. And that's what I want to get a little bit more, Cameron, if we can, because I want to stay progressive New Mexico and what that means to you. And I know we have a huge problem right now. And this is something that you are addressing, and that's the homeless issue.
Yes. So this is not only an issue here in New Mexico. It's become a nationwide crisis.
Right.
The homelessness population has gotten out of control. And it's because of the housing loss. It's because of housing itself. Even Section 8 can't accommodate all of this. Programs like Section 8 or HUD or any of them. We just didn't build the system properly.
And so now we're getting the leftovers. I heard something said the other day about, they were talking about like mental institutes and stuff like that, where, you know, are people that are facing problems with addiction.
Right.
And they, you know, and those people wind up on the streets because there's no program for them.
Exactly. And I actually ran into that same issue with the Albuquerque Journal and read on their little excerpt from what's going on in their investigation. And it's actually quite interesting. You should read it sometime. And basically the problem here is we don't have a program that is designed for all. That's why I'm going to push to pass some type of legislation that is housing for all. We make sure that this is done for good. We need to put fall safes in place.
So you're talking like, you know, like Section 8's housing, but then there be housing built that's for people so that they can have the ability to be able to have stability. And then from there, you know, it's interesting. I was talking to a business owner here in Albuquerque the other day, and he's had, you know, and he hires anywhere from, you know, the $10 to $15 an hour range.
Right.
And he goes, it's so hard because there's people, you know, he has employees that are living in their car. he has people that don't have reliable transportation. And if you can't make it to work on time, or either like now the weather's so bad, you have to look at that and say, what programs are available for me to get myself, especially those people that are out there. I mean, we have mental illness issues. So,
yes, we do.
that's a whole separate, but there are people that are out there that are homeless that are trying to establish themselves and get back on their feet, especially after 2009, what happened with the economy and all that. And you mentioned the housing crisis.
Yes.
So like, especially here in New Mexico, because we have such a problem with homelessness, you're saying to build like housing for them, or how like housing for all? What does that mean?
Housing for all is one, fair housing, because the Fair Housing Act, it's not fair housing in all reality. We need to find a way to fix that, for one. For two, you saw what happened with Joy Junction, right?
Right.
How they built that big old community.
Right.
For the homeless.
Right.
I think that we need to do more things like that nationwide.
Right.
Because in all reality, what are these people going to do if they can't pay their rent? Or even take a shower or take care of themselves so that they can become productive members of society.
Yeah, and a lot of people don't realize this, and I kind of want to share something personal with you, Cameron. I have a digital marketing company, and I go back and forth to Seattle all the time, and have done really well and been real successful. But at one point in my life, I was homeless, and I lived in my car, like a lot of people do, and I ended up working at a car dealership and sold cars and worked my way out of it. But I had to go into the bathroom and use the sink to like iron out my clothes and stretch them out so they didn't look super wrinkled, and ended up, working my way out of it, and then became a manager and then worked forward into that. But I had nothing or nobody. The people that were around me, I didn't really have any friends or anything like that. I just gone through a horrific divorce. And I think there's a lot of people that are out there right now that may have had a bad circumstance. I talked to somebody the other day, and they had been at their job for 3 years, and they were a heroin user, because I want us to get into addiction. They were a heroin user, and somebody gave them a chance. And they've been a productive member of society, doing extremely well at this job.
Right.
Been on the job for 2 years because a person gave them a chance, and they were homeless, and they had the ability to be able to turn around. Now, guess what they're doing? They're working. So what are they doing? They're paying taxes.
Exactly.
So how do we get people from being homeless, especially those that are out there, like myself or like this person that I'm talking, how do we get them in that whole system to get them to the point to where they can be a productive member of society? And especially what we want is for them to pay taxes.
Exactly. Well, as you know, there is a huge crisis with opioids and methamphetamine here in New Mexico at the moment, and nationwide it's becoming a bigger issue. And the problem is we don't have enough programs for them. That's the biggest problem here.
Right.
Is we just don't have it. What we need to do is find a way to get that funding to be able to make more programs for this. Because in all reality, our ultimate goal is for every American to live the American dream, right?
Right, exactly.
And the American dream, I know for a fact, does not include being stuck in a hole in your life.
Right.
And definitely not living the life you didn't want to live in the first place.
Well, I think you mentioned Joy Junction. I think that's a perfect example. I don't know how much government funding they receive or any of that, but you look at successful programs like that. Why wouldn't the government come alongside of them and not only just learn from them, but assist and help something that's already established?
Well, when it comes to that, I have a feeling that it has something to do with the religious aspect of that facility.
Okay.
And right now there's a huge issue in government that they're pushing. They're pushing separation of state and religion.
Right. The church.
And when it comes to that, Joy Junction is owned by a non-for-profit,
Right.
as you know, and the non-for-profit is Christian.
Right.
And being that they're Christian, I believe that's why the government refuses to work with them.
But this is my personal opinion. You may have a different view on this, camera, but I don't care if you're Wiccan, Muslim, Christian, Scientologist. I don't really care what you are. If there's a program, Mormon, doesn't matter. If there's a program and it's being effective and it's helping the community and putting people back on their feet, then we need to look at that and say, what are the principles that are on that? And I think once again, we see this issue with the party line, because no one wants to take a step in that direction to look at something that's successful. School systems are the same way. These school systems have become so political inside of themselves that now we have a problem with school shootings, and everybody on the right wants to turn a blind eye, because, and I'm pro Second Amendment. So, what I'm saying here, everybody on the right wants, because they're so afraid of the NRA and everything that's going on with that. But then you have everybody on the left and they want to turn around and make an extreme, as far as I'm concerned, they want to make this extreme, sweeping law, that affects, our freedom. So we look at these issues of homelessness, addiction, and I want to get into addiction a little bit more with you, and then we look at that and we say, why have we let the political system get so far down that it's affecting women's rights, or it's affecting Americans living, and I love what you said, living the American dream. That's just, it's so sad that it's gotten to that point.
Yes, it's very sad, because in all reality, when our country was founded, the American dream was very much alive, and it seems as though it has died.
Right.
Or it has died a long time ago.
Right.
And that's because we cannot seem to get over ourselves. Some people just can't get over themselves.
Right.
And a lot of these government officials that are in office let the power get to their heads.
Yep.
And when that happens, they become corrupted. And when they become corrupted, it just causes a big old mess, such as this.
Yeah, and you can see it, and then it infiltrates into our communities. So you have, police departments, and I'm not saying Albuquerque is, but I'm just saying, nationwide, you have police departments, and you have school systems, and you have local government, and next thing you know, there's just this wide, rampant corruption that infiltrates, and then what happens? We lose the American dream. And I hope that, whether they agree with you or disagree with you, people that are listening to the show, especially business owners, I hope that you guys understand this is why we need younger politicians and people that are willing to take a stand, and that we should support those that are willing to do that. I want to give people your, if you don't mind again, I want to give people your Twitter so they can DM you. I know you have a website, and then from there, people can do donations.
Yes, they absolutely can, Jason. And that's on actblue.com.
ActBlue? Is it like ActBlue? Like
yes.
ActBlue? Oh, okay, perfect.
Absolutely. And then they go and search my name.
Right.
And my name on there is Cameron Chick Senior, because I am a senior.
Right.
And then they can click on donate.
Okay, perfect.
And they can donate anything from as little as $3 to as big as $200.
Oh, awesome. So, and that's Cameron Chick Senior, right?
Yes, sir.
On ActBlue. One of the things that I find interesting is that a lot of people don't realize, but you grew up in Belen.
Yes, I did.
And you saw, because I want to get back to addiction a little bit, nationwide and in New Mexico, because it's just filtering here. You saw that firsthand in Belen.
Yes, I did. Both from family and friends. I saw one day, everybody seemed normal when I was growing up, from my younger days. And then when I got about 10 or 11, that's when I saw the opioid crisis and the methamphetamine crisis come to a acceleration point. And this issue is not just something I'm touching on because it's a highlight in the news.
Right.
I'm touching on this issue because it matters to me. It hits close to home. I've lost friends and family members to addiction. And it's not easy to watch that.
No, of course. Right. And I I talked to a nurse practitioner the other day, and she was in the emergency room. And I've talked to several people at UNM, Presbyterian, and Lovelace, and they all said the same thing. They said the amount of people that are walking into the emergency rooms, they see it firsthand with these addiction issues and needing, opiates or going from, because a lot of people don't realize they may start on pills, but then from there, the only thing that they have, the next choice that's inexpensive, because pills are so expensive, the next choice is heroin.
Yes.
So, that's what's happening. My personal opinion, I don't know how your opinion on this, I believe it's almost like the banks, what happened with the banks is what's happened with these pharmaceutical companies getting out of control. You know how the banks got out of control and they were too big to fail? I think the pharmaceutical companies right now, instead of taking responsibility for what has happened with the opioid crisis, what is really going on is they want to turn around and turn a blind eye to it because they're making so much profit from this drug to this drug to this drug. But I feel like it is their responsibility as these corporations that have made hundreds and hundreds of percents of profit to look at this crisis and realize that they created it just like the banks did and say, how are we going to fix this? And I think it's government's responsibility to go against these, lobbyists and these pharmaceutical companies and look at it and say, how are we going to fix this? We need to get together, not just corporations, not just government, not just healthcare, but we all need to get together and figure out what are we going to do to solve this? Because like you said, I've had friends of mine that have been personally affected by it. You've had friends that have been affected by it, family members. I think we all could say that. If we went back far enough and looked in our family, we would find somebody that has been touched by this. And it's truly a crisis.
Yes, it truly is. It's a crisis because it's gotten so out of hand. And the problem is we just don't have enough, like I said, programs to deal with this. We don't have anything in place. We have rehab facilities, don't get me wrong.
Right.
But we don't have enough of them.
Right.
We don't have enough programs for those that are currently in jail, even. As the Albuquerque Journal had said, there are no programs at the Metropolitan Detention Center.
Well, it's so funny to me, like I said, this is just my personal opinion, but it's so funny to me how we take somebody that's having an issue, an addiction, and we criminalize them.
Yes. And the whole problem here is this. We want to bring this to a grinding halt. Yet, instead of trying to combat this issue, what we're doing is we're shaming.
Right.
By criminalizing everything. And when this happens, this becomes a huge issue. And the whole society starts thinking it's okay.
Yeah, and then you look at, you just graduated with the criminal justice degree, but you look at this whole system and you look at the percentage of drug-induced crime, and you have to look at it and say, if we took, I'm not saying make all drugs illegal or make them legal or whatever.
Right.
We can have that discussion for 2 hours. But
exactly
what I'm talking about is how much wasted resources are we putting out there, especially in the judicial system, to allow these people, like you said, to turn around and have them being shamed. And I'm using this example of this guy that's been productive. He pulled himself out of heroin, but he had to do it himself. He tried program after program after program, and the programs were, pardon my French, they were half-ass, in some of them. And then he stayed in these houses with other people, because he was homeless. And all they were was just, you have one weakness in that moment, and there's no accountability there. Next thing you know, now you have a whole house full of people just doing heroin, so one has a weakness. And I look at, and we're going to use Joy Junction again, I look at a program like that, even though it's religious, their success rate seems to be doing really well. And that's something the government needs to look into, in my opinion, and look at these programs and say, who's being successful, who's not. Same as school systems. We had that lady that went into Washington, D.C., and revamped the school systems, and next thing you know, grades started going up, especially in the inner city areas. Those are things that we need to look at and say, how can we be for the people? Because, like you said, serving the people means you're making, as a politician, you're making their lives better. And you're passing law to make their lives better.
Yes, that's exactly the idea of government. That's the idea of democracy, is we're elected to do exactly that. And when it comes to this, like I said, I'm going to go back to this. once again, when it comes to all of this, the biggest issue here is the government itself.
Mm-hmm.
The government itself has they've let each other get so out of hand with differences in beliefs and letting that get in the way and all this mass outrage.
Right.
It's causing this country to degress instead of progress.
Yes.
And we need to progress.
Right.
That's why we need more people that are like myself to go out there into say Congress or the Senate and push to help the people, not themselves. Because what's happening right now? What just happened in the presidency?
Mm-hmm.
As far as we know, he may be guilty of this, but if he did it, that means he did something for his own personal gain.
Right.
And when we have politicians that do that, that's way too far.
I think they would have to, not to quote the Bible or be real religious, but there was that point where all the Pharisees were standing there and they were wanting to condemn this woman and put her to death. And Jesus put a line in the sand and said, and then, basically kind of called them out and they all left.
Exactly.
So, how do you call someone out for corruption if you're corrupt yourself?
Exactly. That's the whole problem.
Mm-hmm.
Is none of them are.
Mm-hmm.
None of them are innocent anymore. They have all been in office long enough to have been corrupted. And in all reality, the corruption starts with election. With the election.
Yeah, it's almost interesting when you get into political side, because I have gotten into that with my digital marketing company, and we've helped, not only in Washington State, but here in New Mexico. It's funny how the party so controls everything. And they almost want to vet you to the party, instead of allowing it to be, and I don't know, maybe you know a little bit more about this, but instead of allowing it to be, let me go campaign to the people and allow the people to speak for this. Why do I have to be vetted through this party first before I can even get the platform to talk to the people?
You see, this has become a nationwide issue.
Mm-hmm.
Is now it's become all about this. You have to be affiliated with such and such party to run.
Right.
There is no more of this, oh, I'm going to run just because I know I can do better.
Right.
There's no more of that. Back in the day, oh yeah, there was plenty of that, but not anymore. And it's because the Democratic parties, all the parties actually, I'm not even going to sit here and scrutinize any single party.
Right.
Every single party makes money off of these candidates.
Right.
And it seems to be a money issue here now. And then they dangle these things in front of these candidates and say, look what we have, come to our side.
Right.
And then before you know it, that candidate's corrupt.
Mm-hmm.
Before they even get into office.
Charismatic person, and then from there they feed them all this, and
exactly
then turn them into this. And you can see that, and I see it on both sides, and that's the sad part. And I'm so glad, our time's almost up, but I'm so glad, Cameron, that you're running. I appreciate you being young and taking interest in politics. There's so many people your age that has just been fed up with it, are either what I see 20-year-olds and millennials doing is they're just picking the left side without understanding it. Maybe they went to college and that's what their professors pushed. And, like I said, I'm not right, I'm not left, but I feel just picking a side or picking a party, you need to take the time and be responsible like you are, Cameron, and understand these issues and get to the point to where if you don't want to get involved, at least understand what you're doing when you put that check mark there.
Yes, exactly. And that's all I ask of voters when they go to vote June 2nd, 2020.
So it's June 2nd?
Yes, sir.
Oh, okay, cool. And so I want to get into before we close, I want to get into your, I want to once again get into your website, and then from there they can donate. What's your website again, Cameron?
My website is, again, www.cameronchick4congressnmcd1.com. And when it comes to the For Congress position, I want to make it very clear that it's the number 4, not FOR.
Oh, okay, perfect. So yeah, it's www.cameronchik, CHIK, and then it's Congress for congressmed1.com. So you can have a long name there. So I hope everybody gets that. They can probably Google you, type in Cameron Chick.
Yes, they can.
Yeah.
What they can do is, I've found by just searching myself, is when they search, go to Google.
Right.
Google's one of the best things out there when it comes to
search-wise,
searching. Go to, type in Cameron and then CHICK.
Right.
And then put 1st Congressional District in M.
So just so everybody's on clarity here, Deborah Holland is the Congresswoman now.
Yes.
And then you have 2 other Republicans that are running against you?
Yes, I do. As of actually not that long ago, it's been, I think, a couple of days now, that there's now 2 Republicans.
Okay. Yeah, and I think it's Brian, somebody, yeah, I forgot.
It's Brett Kukunis.
Brett, yeah, and then it's Michelle Garcia Holmes is the other one.
Yes.
On the Republican side. And then it's you and Deborah Holland?
Yes, it is.
On the, are you in the Democrat Party or?
I am registered Democrat.
Right.
However, I consider myself a progressive Democrat.
Okay. Like you said, like in the likes of Bernie Sanders.
Yes.
Yeah, that would be something that you would resonate with.
Yes.
Okay.
And I would actually like to leave everybody with this. And it's something that has touched my life in regards to politics. And it's a quote from JFK. Ask not what your country can do for you, but what you can do for your country.
Great quote. I love that. That's perfect. Well, thanks, Cameron. I appreciate it. I thank you guys for listening to the Albuquerque Business Podcast. If you want to go to our website, you can go to abqpodcast.com. That's abqpodcast.com. If you want to follow me, I'm most active on Instagram, and that is abq Jason Rigby. You can DM me if you have questions on digital marketing or small business, especially here in the Albuquerque area. Would love to be able to either have you on the show, or if you know somebody that's being influential and making a difference for the positive in this community, then please let me know. And thank you guys, and thank you, Cameron, so much.
Thank you, Jason.
Thank you for joining us on the Albuquerque Business Podcast. And thank you to our sponsor, DukeCityMarketing.com. Please go to abqpodcast.com, where you can get show notes, resources, and links to everything we talked about today to help you navigate your journey as an entrepreneur and business owner in Albuquerque.